Several reboots or reimaginings this week in TV news and reviews, some almost exactly as they were before, and some with many, many differences to the originals. They are among the 6 new shows we're going to talk about this week, and of course, we've got the news as well. Let's talk TV. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to TV News and Reviews for the week. We're going to tackle 6 new programs, including A League of Their Own, a new TV version of the great film with a bunch of different characters and some different things going on in it. But of course, at the center is still, ladies playing baseball during World War II. We've also got a miniseries called 5 Days at the Memorial about Hurricane Katrina, a new comedy series called This Fool, and a romance series as well, Cosmic Love, not really reinventing the wheel there. And then speaking of not reinventing the wheel, Beavis and Butt-head is back. Password, the game show, is back as well. We're going to talk about all of that coming up on TV News and Reviews. First, though, I do want to welcome you into Dan Reviews and thank you for finding this video. I do TV news and reviews every single week here on the channel, and you can find the latest stuff with that either in the news front or the newest shows that are on, and we'll tackle those every single week here on the channel, so keep that in mind. But all right, let's get into the news, speaking of which. So renewals, a lot of them this week. Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but a few major ones. So Nathan Fielder's The Rehearsal has been renewed for season 2 on HBO. This is a show that just wrapped up season 1. I think it only went 6 episodes. And I watched the first couple of them for you to review them. It's one of the most unique things out there. I'm intrigued to see how the rest of the season went from the episodes I reviewed, but looking forward to more of those. And then speaking of HBO, Curb Your Enthusiasm has officially been renewed for a 12th season. It is the longest-running scripted series on the network, spanning 20 years, 11 seasons, and 110 episodes. But the interesting thing about that to me is I was sort of under the impression the show never really gets renewed. Larry just says, hey, I want to do a season, and then they do it. Like, it's never canceled, but it's always one of these things that sort of is just hanging in the air. If Larry wants to do a season, then they do a season. So for many years, they didn't do any, and then in the last few years, between like the Donald Trump presidency and the COVID stuff, they've done like 3 seasons at least, I think, in the last 4 years or so. So definitely always happy to see Larry back with that. And then The Chi renewed for season 6 on Showtime. Season 5 is wrapping up in just a couple of weeks, and season 4 averaged 4.2 million viewers across all platforms, and I guess that's probably with 7 days delayed viewing time. But it is the network's second longest running current program. Billions has already been renewed for a 7th season, so that is 1 year sort of ahead of The Chi, but obviously a lot of people always loving that show. So all right, no cancellations to report for you this week. It makes sense. I think we'll start having those in about a month or so once the network fall schedules come out. But in casting news, we have more Yellow Jackets casting. So Elijah Wood is joining season 2 of the cast. Lauren Ambrose was just announced last week from the old 6 Feet Under show. Elijah Wood is going to play the role of Walter, who is a dedicated citizen detective who will challenge present-day Misty, who is played in the present-day version by Christina Ricci. And that should be interesting. Love a good Yellow Jacket. Season 2 shaping up, obviously, there. And then season 4 of Sex Education. We talked about that recently, too, because they're sort of changing not really the format of the show, but the setting of the show, because some of the characters are moving from high school to college. And Dan Levy has given us now his next TV role after Schitt's Creek, and he is going to play a college tutor in season 4 of Sex Education. So there's that. All right, in some announced shows that could be coming very soon, The Idol is coming to HBO with Abel Tesfaye, who is better known as The Weeknd, and Lily Rose Depp, who is better known as Johnny Depp's daughter. And that is set in the LA music industry. Centers on a self-help guru and the leader of a modern-day cult, who's played by The Weeknd, who develops a complicated relationship with an up-and-coming pop singer who is played by Depp. I've seen Lily Rose Depp act in a couple things, and she is definitely not her father. The Weeknd I haven't really seen act in much of anything. I mean, he does music videos and he acts a little bit in those, but a little bit when he was the musical guest of SNL, he was in like one recorded sketch. But I will see how he does it. Because he's not playing the musician here, she is, so could be interesting. All right, ABC has picked up The Company You Keep for their mid-season, starring Milo Ventimiglia. Of course, This Is Us has wrapped, so all of the actors from that program have been finding new shows, new avenues. And Ventimiglia in this program is going to play Charlie, who is a con man, sharing a night of passion that leads to love with CIA officer Emma, who is played by Good Trouble's Catherine Hannah Kim, and they are unknowingly on a collision course professionally. And Charlie's going to ramp up the family business so he can get out for good, while Emma is closing in on the vengeful criminal who holds Charlie's family debts in hand. So I like Milo Ventimiglia. I never really watched Heroes, but even from back then, he was certainly somebody to watch in the future. So I love that he really landed a great role with This Is Us. And I love that all of those people are sort of moving on to different shows and other things we can see them in the future. All right, in odds and ends, a lot of stuff with the ratings. So streaming has overtaken cable for the first time ever. The July rankings just came out a few days ago, and streaming is the number one platform with 34.8% of all TV time. And that's partially due, they're saying, to Stranger Things, Umbrella Academy, and The Boys, all coming out with new episodes in July. It is up 1.1% from June and up from 28.3% a year ago. So that's like a 6% increase year over year, which is crazy. Cable is just below it, 34.4%. So just a 0.4% difference there. Broadcast keeps dropping with 21.6%. And then other, the category other, which includes video, gaming, DVD and Blu-ray watching, and that sort of thing, is 9.2%. I think that includes things like YouTube as well, if you watch YouTube on... Or maybe, actually, you know what? Maybe YouTube counts as streaming, now that I think about it. But anyway, HBO Max, still at that 1% mark for all of the streaming usage, but Netflix is still the king of that with 8% of all TV usage. They are going to Netflix. YouTube, and there it is. So YouTube is part of the streaming algorithm. YouTube 7.3%, Hulu 3.6%, Amazon Prime 3%, and then Disney at 1.8% and HBO Max at 1%. Everything else combined for 10.2%. So that would be like Peacock, Apple TV, Discovery Plus, Stars, Showtime, all of that kind of stuff on the streaming apps. And then in other ratings news, HBO's House of the Dragon is HBO's biggest premiere ever, with nearly 10 million people watching on debut night across all platforms. The largest numbers really on HBO since Game of Thrones finale, which had almost double that, 19.3 million back in the day. And then other than that, the highest they've recently had is season 2's finale of Euphoria, which earned 6.6 million across all platforms. So with House of the Dragon, usually I'm about a week behind on the TV stuff, partially because I'm always behind, but partially because I do like to, things that air weekly, I do like to give shows 2 to 3 episodes to try it out. So if it's a show that only aired 1 episode the first week and then we have to wait for the next one, I like to do it like that, and House of Dragon would be an example of that. But I decided, even though I have not ever seen Game of Thrones, I am going to review House of the Dragon on next week's show because it is a prequel, and I read up about, do you have to see Game of Thrones to understand this? And because it's a prequel, no, there's obviously things in there that will be little Easter eggs for people that loved Game of Thrones, and some of the family lines exist in House of the Dragon. But I feel like I know enough about, the families in Game of Thrones and stuff to at least get by. But from what I understand, you don't really have to know anything about Game of Thrones since it is a prequel. It's a whole new sort of universe with this, show, I guess. I don't know where I was going with that sentence, but anyway, so I have decided, yes, I'm going to review House of the Dragon next week, so we'll see how that goes. And then finally, in sort of odds and ends news, The Resort, which is a show on Peacock that I really was digging. It aired this week on NBC, the pilot episode because they are trying to get people to Peacock. Like I just said, it's got less than 1% of the streaming share, so they want to drive eyeballs to Peacock, and they have a great show on their hands with The Resort. So after one of the episodes this week of America's Got Talent, which is summer's #1 show always, they put the pilot episode up. So hopefully it drives people to Peacock. I think Peacock has some really, really good shows on there. All right, so let's see. Other than that, we've got a couple of reboots and spinoffs, and then we will get to the reviews. So The Mole is coming back, and this was a show on ABC way, way back in the day. Anderson Cooper was one of the hosts of that. The original ran for 4 seasons. I think 2 was regular people and 2 was a celebrity season. And the show has already been shot. It's in the can. It was shot in Australia last year. I couldn't read anything about who the host is. They're keeping that pretty tight-lipped, I guess, but it will be on Netflix coming pretty soon. And this makes total sense to me because The Mole was sort of the original of all of these shows now who are talking about, like, oh, there's a, an evil person in our midst that's trying to screw up our game. The Hustler on ABC. I just reviewed one, I think it was last week, called Snake in the Grass on USA. So they keep coming out with these shows about somebody is spoiling, the success rate for these teams, and they're hoping to claim the prize for themselves, whatever. That is The Mole, and that came out first 20 years ago almost, or maybe more at this point. So anyway, I'm happy to see that return. I always liked that show, and it makes sense now with all of these types of shows doing similar things. All right, and then also in reboots and spinoffs, King Kong is in the works at Disney Plus as a series, and it is going to be based on the 1933 film, and it's going to explore Kong and the origins of Skull Island as well. So, obviously, look, I never saw the 1933 movie, but obviously it starts out with him, King Kong being in chains, and then they bring him to New York City and all of that kind of stuff. So, I guess we're sort of exploring a lot of that earlier stuff that maybe the movie sort of gave us some hints about, or, a couple of scenes with. But for the most part, I believe most of that movie does take place in New York. So now we got a little bit about Skull Island in the Kong Skull Island movie in 2017, I think. But that takes place in the 70s. I'm not sure when this is supposed to be taking place. Is it going to take place in the 20s and 30s? I don't know. But that will be coming at some point to Disney Plus. All right, so look, let's move over to the reviews because we've got a lot of really interesting shows to talk about, and let's start with A League of Their Own. This is on Amazon Prime Video. All 8 episodes are up to watch right now. I watched the first 2 of this for you, and I'd been talking about this in TV news for a little while because this is a great film. It's actually having a 30th anniversary this year, and I remember seeing it in theaters. I've seen it at least once since then. And I may be watching it for an anniversary type video to review, coming up. But for now, I'm going to talk just really about the TV show because it is vastly different from the movie. We have different characters. Some of the archetypes are the same, and obviously the themes are the same here of the women playing baseball during the war and all of this. So that sort of stuff is the same, but different groups of people here. And in fact, this really is kind of a 2A story plot that is going to, I think, as the episodes progress, sort of conjoin a bit. You've got sort of the white gals who are going out for the team, a la the movie. And in this case, some of those people include Abby Jacobson from Broad City, Darcy Carden from The Good Place, and I'm not sure who the third person is, to be honest. But anyway, and then, so you've got them sort of doing the Gina Davis, Madonna, Rosie O'Donnell type stuff. But then you have this other completely, subplot over here that I think is going to merge with the other plot. And that is Shantae Adams leading this cast of African Americans. And they were talking about, having Negroes in baseball. The Negro Leagues was a big thing at the time. I'm not a baseball historian for sure. But I'm trying to remember when Jackie Robinson broke into the majors. But anyway, they did have Negro Leagues at the time, before Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier. So you've got both of these stories kind of hopefully converging a little more. They start to in episode 2. And I think for now, they're both pretty interesting. My biggest problem with it so far is that the Black storyline, we haven't gotten a lot of characterization yet. We've seen a lot of the characters, but for now they seem to be a little bit one note. Hey, I'm a black woman that can, knock the hell out of a baseball and pitch really well. Look at me, and everybody kind of blowing her off and saying, no, that's not going to happen, blah, blah, blah. That's like really stock stuff. Like we see that in all of these sort of, break the color barrier type of movies, especially with sports. So I'm hoping that as the series progresses, we'll see a little bit more in terms of some good character development there, because I love this character that Shantae Adams plays, Maxine, but where is it going? I hope somewhere good. And then in the meantime, they are capturing the humor, I think, from the movie. They're capturing a lot of the camaraderie with the women from the movie. Another thing that it is touching on that the movie did not, other than the color barrier stuff, is the lesbianism. This was, obviously lesbians existed in the 40s, but in the 1990s, you couldn't really show that in mainstream movies very well. And look, I believe that was something that was certainly happening. You have some very athletically talented women. At least a couple of them may be lesbians. So I think that's an interesting plot as well. I know this show is getting a little bit of sort of flack from, dummies basically saying, oh, it's so woke, whatever. This is actually, I feel like, probably a lot more realistic to what was going on in that era than the Penny Marshall movie in the 90s. And that's a great movie. But look, I'm pretty sure it was like rated PG, so they couldn't really tackle, I think, a lot of the things that were really going on at the time. So, but other than like where are the characters sort of going in the Maxine group, I would love to see that really, really take hold. It could be the more interesting of the two sides of this if it's played right. But also, I think, I love Abby Jacobson and Darcy Carden, and they're playing really, really well off each other. So this is, so far, a really good show. I think it is very worthy follow-up to the film I Leave a League of Their Own so far with an A-. Next, we will talk about 5 Days at Memorial. This is on Apple TV Plus, and it is a miniseries based on a book about it's based on the book of the same name, about Hurricane Katrina, and specifically about this hospital that had, to deal with not only all of their normal patients, but now you've got flood victims and you've got the flooding itself. The levees are breaking and all of this. News is sort of very slowly trickling in and what's a lie and what's the truth. This is before a lot of, mainstream media was on the internet with news, so it was a lot of word of mouth. Cell phones did exist, but certainly not to the degree they do now, and they weren't smartphones and all that stuff. So this is going to be an interesting one, I think, because the first episode is... Ooh, it is amazing. It's one of the best, you don't really call pilot episode if it's just a mini series where there's only going to be a handful of episodes. But so the first episode, let's say, but it was so heavy hitting in terms of like the immediacy of the trauma and the disaster. Like, it reminded me a lot of, honestly, some of the scenes in Titanic, when the Titanic starts going down, which is a movie I love, if you know my channel. But some of the things that we were witnessing in that first episode, I was like, oh, like I'm gasping and all of this. And they were real reactions to what was going on because it was filmed and shot incredibly well. So love that. And some of the actors here I really enjoy as well. Vera Farmiga plays sort of the lead doctor, and then Cherry Jones, who I just recently finished watching in another Apple TV show called Defending Jacob. She plays the lawyer in that, and here she plays, I guess, like the head of the hospital. I don't know what the official title is, but she's sort of one of the main people in charge. And they are sort of dealing with their own personal things going on. The Cherry Jones character has her mom with her. The Vera Farmiga character is having possibly some marital issues. And while they're sort of dealing with their own stuff, they have to take care of hundreds of people. Now, the reason that I'm not grading, I mean, if this was based on the first episode alone, it's like an A, maybe even higher. Like, that first episode was amazing. But here is, I think, where the downfall of this program is going to be. And it's not going to be that much lower of a grade. But the framing device so far in the first couple episodes is this after-the-fact kind of hearing and deposition with people dying in this hospital and what happened, and let's talk about it. And so it's a lot of like Cherry Jones and her character sort of recounting, oh, well, then this happened, and then we see it. And really, it's almost entirely so far a bookend. There's not a lot like in the middle of it. I think in the second episode, they did flashback at least once or twice to that, the aftermath stuff. And my fear is that as we go further in the series, we're going to see more of that and have less sort of to look at from those moments of Hurricane Katrina. And so that is a little bit of an issue for me, but they're using both real life footage from the news back then. I think the news people that they're getting and the news footage they're getting, and sort of the voiceovers in that respect, I think those are also real. I'm not positive, but if not, it's very well done and very well integrated. You can definitely tell what is video footage from that because it's more, lower budget. 20 years ago, cameras were not as pristine and sharp as they are today. So you can definitely tell, but I think that actually brought a little bit more authenticity into it. So you're not, and that was part of that pilot episode of just like, oh my God, the gasping, because you saw some of these things happening, in quote unquote real time, in the video footage mixed with what they're showing here at the hospital with the live actors from today. So I think it's a really, really great show. I worry how much the legal stuff as we go forward is going to impact it. Like, I'm worried that the last episode is just going to be them doing like depositions and stuff like that, and I'm not quite as pumped about that. And I can see it, because it wasn't hardly at all in episode 1, and then episode 2 it's definitely like in a few different scenes. So I don't know, that's me sort of casting what I think might happen, but for now I'm going to leave 5 Days at Memorial with an A-. Couple of real strong shows to start our program this week. All right, next we're going to talk about This Fool. This is on Hulu, and this is here. I'm going to just read you the description here of this because I think it will give you an idea of what kind of show this is. A comedy show we can expect here. So here is the byline: Julio Lopez, a punk ass bitch with a heart of gold who goes out of his way to help everyone but himself. That is the byline from the studio of this program. So Julio is played by Chris Estrada. There's a few people I do recognize in here, including Michael Imperioli from the old Sopranos TV show. He plays sort of like a rehab facilitator kind of guy who deals with people who are getting out of prison and, sort of acclimating them back into the real world. So this guy, Julio, is trying to just live his life and do what he needs to do. But there are people in his life who have a checkered past, and they have now returned. And a lot of things in that world are sort of, we're realizing, oh, we're in our 40s now. In the one episode, they're going to get the old gang back together to like bash some skulls. And everybody's like, oh, my kid has, such and such practice. And, oh, I can't, I got a bad back. And this is a show that I am glad I watched more than the first episode. Comedy series, I always say this, are very hard to do a great pilot because you have to really cram a lot into about 22 minutes. And this does stick to a traditional like 20-minute 23-minute format for each episode. It's not your typical like Hulu stuff that it's like, oh, it could be 30 minutes, it could be 38 minutes. They stick pretty much to like a network design of about 22, 23 minutes per episode. And that's a lot. That's demanding for a pilot to let us know all these characters. And of course, half the time in comedies, the jokes come from knowing the characters and knowing how they react and stuff. And so this is one where the first episode I was like, ooh, I am not feeling this. The jokes don't really seem to be landing for me. And then I actually ended up watching 3 of this show, but by episode 2, I was like, okay, now I'm getting to know the characters. I'm getting to know, what's funny about them and what makes them tick and their dialogue with each other and stuff. And then by episode 3, I was like, I am all in on this show. It is very, very funny. It really is. And I'll be honest, off the top of my head, I don't think it's a clean show. In fact, I can say it's definitely not, now that I'm thinking about some of the things that happen in episode 3. But it is interesting to me that it is kind of sticking to that, pretty strict, okay, we're going to do the episode in 22 minutes like a traditional TV show. I always find that interesting when streamers decide to sort of do that. And I think it works for this show, though. If not for the cursing and some of the, the adult humor, you could put this probably on a late night, Comedy Central type thing or something, and I think it would work there. It's very, very funny, and because the cast is largely Hispanic, it's something that we don't necessarily see all the time. I'm all for these comedies lately with a lot of diversity. I was just talking to my buddy Tim about Reservation Dogs, which is also on Hulu, FX on Hulu specifically, but it is on Hulu. You can watch that now, and that is about like indigenous people. This one, about sort of Hispanic stuff. But what is interesting about it too is we do see there are, I feel like, some things that do happen in the real world when people get out of prison that we've seen dramatized in certain things, but it usually is not in a comedy show unless it's like really broad, like something like Mac's dad in Always Sunny in Philadelphia or something like that. This seems pretty genuine with, trying to get back into the real world after being incarcerated for a while. So I really like this one. I think I'm going to leave it with a B+. And I could probably give it an A- as well. 3 A- in a row. We don't usually have, but, I would say because that first episode wasn't quite hitting me, I'll knock it down just a peg for that, but I'm going to leave this fool with a B+. All right, now here's where it might get a little bit worse in the grades. We've got a reality dating show. I don't always do these, but every so often there's one that's like really it's hitting me on the advertisements, and the premise seems interesting enough. So this is called Cosmic Love, and Cree Summer, who you might know from a lot of cartoon voice work, but she also played on the TV show A Different World back in the 80s and 90s. But she basically plays this, like, astro chamber, it's called, which is sort of like a crystal ball type thing. And she is sort of the voice of this house. And there's 4 single people, each representing a different element of the zodiac. So you've got an air person, a fire person, a water person, and an earth person. And they are searching for a match based solely on astrological compatibility, and so they bring in a handful of people with different signs and different astrological things going on, and eventually they will, pair off and hopefully, go the distance, I guess, or whatever. I thought this was going to be mildly interesting, and it really wasn't. I'm not a huge believer in the different signs and stuff. I'm a Sagittarius. I do find that Sagittariuses do get along very, very well with other Sagittariuses or Sagittarii or whatever you call them. Most of my friends in high school were Sagittariuses, like myself. So, okay. So, there maybe is something to that. But in terms of like dating people, I don't know what anybody's month sign is except for my own. I think maybe Cancer is during the summer. Is that June or something? Anyway, so I don't take much stock into this, but, look, I'm always open for new dating shows and their concepts, but the problem with this one is it comes off just as a basic carbon copy of a lot of the others, like The Bachelor and stuff, down to the, hey, can I borrow you for a second, and that kind of nonsense. And I imagine as we go on in the episodes, we're going to have these people take, fabulous trips and go to these fabulous dinners. And of course, you're going to fall in love with the person. You're at the Eiffel Tower on a hot air balloon ride. Big shock. There's, you're falling in love with that person. The idea of the crystal chamber and whatever, and the orb is interesting. And I will say, Cree Summer actually does a pretty fun job with the lines that she's given or whatever. And it does give you a little bit of a tutorial about, this, the Virgos match the best with this. And here's their positive qualities. Here's their negative qualities. Okay, but I feel like if you already follow the star signs and the zodiac and all that stuff, you probably already know that. So yeah, for me, this left me a little bit, less than thrilled. It's just another run-of-the-mill dating show it turns out to be. So I'm going to leave Cosmic Love with a C-. And next, we will have our two almost carbon copy reboots. You've got, and I'll talk about them separately, but you've got Beavis and Butt-head on Paramount Plus returning once again for now the third time, and then Password returning for, I don't know, the fifth time maybe, and that one's on NBC. So let's talk about Beavis and Butt-head first. This first obviously came out in the earlier 90s, 93 I think, or 92, something like that, and then it was rebooted by MTV in 2010, and there was supposed to be a Comedy Central reboot, but Paramount owns all of that stuff, so they have shuttled a few of those things over to Paramount Plus to hopefully get some more eyeballs there. And they did the movie Beavis and Butt-head Do the Universe a couple of months ago, and so now they have a new show. So look, Mike Judge is still doing all the voices. He is still, having a hand in writing a lot of the stuff, and realistically, not much has changed. I mean, this is about the exact same as the 2010 version. And one thing I think is interesting is that the look of these characters always stays the same. Mike Judge did an interview that I saw recently about, hey, have you ever thought of, putting them as CGI, and sort of making them look more modern? And he said that they've tried that, and every time they just are not as funny. So, and I believe that, I think there is something simplistic to them that is sort of touching, actually. They're dum-dums. And look, my buddy Joe and I did a whole thing recently about Beavis and Butt-head Do America, because we were doing one of our long-form reviews about Cool World for the 30th anniversary, and so we picked another adult animated film of the 90s, and we did Beavis and Butt-head, and so I talked about a lot of that stuff in that video, and I also did a standalone review for Beavis and Butt-head Do the Universe, so I've talked a lot about that. So this show is basically the old show and the 2010 show. It's a little more 2010 show because instead of only talking about music videos in the sort of interstitials with the episode, now they are doing TikTok videos and YouTube videos and stuff like that. And back in the 2010 reboot on MTV, they did some reality programming from MTV's, filmography of like Teen Mom and 16 and Pregnant and My Super Sweet 16, all that kind of stuff. So, and were they... I don't think they were joking about the Kardashians, because that wouldn't be MTV, I guess. But anyway, so they were doing a lot of the MTV reality stuff. Here they're doing TikTok stuff. There are a few music videos here and there, but they're definitely fewer and further between, which I think is interesting because, everybody does still make music videos. They don't get shown on TV really ever, but you can watch them on YouTube, and many of them have, millions and millions, and a couple of them have billions and billions of views. So I find it interesting that they're sort of, look, I get it, though. TikTok is popular now, YouTube videos about instructional, whatever, that's popular too. So, all right, it's fine. Give them a little bit of something else to talk about. But at its core, this show is the same. These guys are the same. And it still makes me laugh, just like it did 30 years ago at this point. So, I will leave Beavis and Butt-head with a B. I mean, they're not reinventing the wheel, so I can't give it much higher than that. But I think that's a pretty solid grade for, basically more of the same. All right, so Password is where we're going to talk about last. And I'm a game show guy. I can talk about game shows forever. I've thought many times about on this channel doing some sort of like history of game shows type videos. But Password is one that I've watched really ever since I was a kid. Because there have been so many different iterations, and then of course when Game Show Network came on, they aired all the like old '60s ones as well. And of course that is really where Betty White got her sort of love of game show, being a game show panelist, because her husband Alan Ludden was the host at the time. So she started out doing that, and then through the rest of Betty's life, we saw her do all these different game shows, and there's a very nice tribute to her in the first episode of this. But so here are the differences. Obviously, the old host, not so much. Even the most recent host, which was Regis, about 12 years ago or something, he obviously has passed on as well. So it is hosted by Keke Palmer from The View and from Akeelah and the Bee. I have such a crush on her. She's so wonderful and so fun. She is an excellent host for this show. She really is. She's having so much fun with the contestants. You can tell she's having a blast doing the hosting gig. And she is doing it with her good buddy, Jimmy Fallon. So really, I would say anybody from the last 5 or 6 years in TV land, would know Password because it is a regular on Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show. And he had Betty White on several times doing it. And you can find a ton of YouTube videos of different clips of the Jimmy Fallon Tonight Show doing Password. So it's really no surprise that they made a whole hour-long show out of it. Unlike some of the ABC shows that go on for an hour that are, too long, this one does what some of the better ABC primetime game shows does, and that is split it into 2 half-hour episodes. So really, it's a full hour show, but it's 2 full episodes in there. So they're not making these contestants, play an hour-long game, which I think is very smart. But Jimmy Fallon, because of, him doing it on the Tonight Show, is a regular celebrity panelist. So it's Keke Palmer to host, Jimmy Fallon as one of the celebs, and then a second celeb. Yeah, John Hamm so far, Heidi Klum. I've seen 3 of them. I can't think of who the third one was now. It was Meghan Trainor, the singer. So they do basically pretty much like the old show. Now, there have been a few different iterations, but this one harkens back to really that original program where you just have one word and it has nothing to do with any of the other words you're doing. There's no like super password or anything. This is just, one word clues back and forth, and, it's a point system from that, and then the winner goes on to try and win $25,000. And I'll tell you what, because of the looseness of it, because of Keke Palmer's enthusiasm, because of Jimmy Fallon, being the pro at this, from doing it on his show for so long and being a bit cocky, but, in a funny way, this is one of those game shows where you want to be there. Like, you want to be in on this party. And I love shows like that. And it's such a simple concept that they've done very, very well with. This is one of the better game show reboots I've seen in a while. I really, really enjoyed watching it. This is definitely going into, my regular game show rotation. I'm going to leave Password with an A-. So a lot of really good shows this week, and then that bad Cosmic Love program. But that was sort of always going to be the outlier because the dating shows I don't always do so well with. Some of them are very interesting, have different concepts, but and that really added nothing to the table. But everything else I can definitely recommend, and a little something for everybody. For the comedy fan, you've got This Fool. For the game show fan, you've got Password. For the drama, you've got 5 days at whatever, the hospital, whatever it's called, 5 days at Memorial. And then A League of Their Own is sort of a little bit of everything. There's some drama, some comedy, some sports. So yeah, definitely some good recommends this week. Next week, 2 real biggies. I told you I'm going to do House of the Dragon, but of course Marvel's She-Hulk has come out as well, so I'm going to review that as well. So 2 really big ones on next week's show. And thanks for watching. I'll see you then.